As many of you probably know, the US has now imposed a staggering 145% tariff on any imports from China. So as an Amazon seller, initially this news might have gotten you a little bit excited because maybe you thought that this would finally put a stop to a lot of the influx of Chinese sellers to the Amazon US marketplace. The opposite has been true, and these tariffs have really been hurting US sellers and haven't really been having much of an impact on Chinese competitors. I run an Amazon marketing agency. It's called PPC Farm, and I've been seeing a lot of sellers having to make really big changes in their online stores, and some of them even have to consider shutting down because of what these tariffs are doing to their margins. These are really big, 7-8 figure sellers on Amazon, and because their margins are being so severely impacted, they have to make drastic changes in the company. In this video, I'm going to show you the tactics that Chinese sellers are using to completely sidestep these massive tariffs. Why US sellers can't do the same thing without risking fees, legal implications, and even prison time. And what you need to do to survive as an e-commerce seller in 2025 if you manufacture in China, whether you're on Amazon, Shopify, Walmart, or any other channel. I'm going to specifically be looking at Amazon today because that's my area of expertise, but it applies to anybody who manufactures in China and is based in the US. One quick caveat here, I just want to say that this is nothing against China or Chinese culture in any way. It's just the way that our legal systems are set up in both countries and why certain loopholes are easier to take advantage of because of that. So while US-based sellers are getting absolutely crushed by these tariffs, like I said at the beginning, Chinese sellers are able to find ways to completely circumvent them. So I'm going to break down 3 specific tactics that Chinese sellers are using to do. So the first and most common tactic is manipulating invoice values. In other words, they declare the value of a shipment is different than what it actually is, usually less. Let's say a US seller orders $10,000 worth of goods from China. With the new 145% tariff, that US seller would end up paying about $14,500 in tariffs versus maybe a few $1,000s or even nothing in the past, depending on how you classified your HS code and things like that. But some Chinese competitors are declaring the same shipment to have a value of, let's say, $2,000 on customs forms. So instead of paying $14,500 in tariffs, they're paying $2,900. This lets them price their products dramatically lower than their US counterparts while maintaining their profit margins. And again, this goes for any marketplace, whether they're selling through their own website on Amazon, Shopify, Walmart, etc. So the worst consequence that Chinese seller could face if it was potentially found out that they were under-declaring the value of shipment, all they would really have to do is open a new LLC and try again. However, if a US-based seller tried to do something similar, they could face potentially federal prison time for committing customs fraud. And especially if they are a larger importer and they import a lot, they're definitely on someone's radar. So you can see the playing field isn't exactly level. All right, the second major tactic that Chinese sellers will use is simply shipping those products to another country and then relabeling as manufactured in those countries and completely avoiding the tariff against China altogether. Typically, they'll ship to places like Hong Kong, Vietnam, Singapore, something like that, and completely avoid the Chinese tariff altogether. Again, if a US seller tried this, these could be seen as serious federal crimes with fines and even possible prison sentences. But when it's happening overseas, it becomes much, much harder to detect, investigate, and of course, actually prosecute. Now, the third tactic that Chinese sellers will often use is to completely violate marketplace policies. And it's much more likely for a US seller to risk something like this because oftentimes these are effectively small businesses with their entire livelihoods tied to these platforms. And yes, of course, on both sides, you could simply start a new store and start from scratch, but obviously it takes time and not something that would likely be worthwhile. So take a look at this product here. This is being sold on Amazon US, and it is being advertised as made in the USA. However, when you scroll down and find the country of origin, it clearly states it was made in China. So this is what I mean by a policy violation of the marketplace. Amazon has rules to prevent against this kind of misleading information, but some of these Chinese sellers simply ignore it. And we see similar tactics across all marketplaces from Chinese sellers, anything ranging from misleading listing information like this one to fake reviews and other black hat SEO tactics. Again, US-based sellers could certainly participate in this kind of behavior, but it's simply much harder to regain what they could potentially lose. All right, so if you're a US-based seller and you manufacture in China, what are your options? How can you survive this time? If we can't compete on price with sellers who don't play by the rules, what options do legitimate e-commerce sellers in the US have right now? The first thing I recommend you do is a deep dive into your portfolio. So what you want to do is ruthlessly evaluate all of the SKUs that you are currently selling, and anything that is not going to be profitable with these tariff increases, consider pausing sales on that, removing inventory, and essentially killing those SKUs. Now, of course, this is very drastic, and if you do have a large portfolio, it won't have as much of an impact, but if you just have a few products, this might not be feasible for you. So you could consider number 2, which is to raise prices. Now, I know that this is not really possible for some folks in certain categories. You'll simply price yourself out of the market. But if you are able to do so without hurting your conversion rates, then I recommend doing this as a potential way to weather this storm. Number 3, you could consider scaling back on your advertising. This will almost certainly impact your rank, specifically for Amazon, but it could be a way for you to at least maintain some kind of margin on those products that have been impacted by the increased tariffs. None of these things are ideal, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend them under normal circumstances, but it is necessary triage to do for your business. We've helped our clients at the agency to do this already. So we've helped them to identify SKUs that they might need to sunset. We've helped them to figure out where they might be able to raise prices without hurting conversion rates. Additionally, scale back ads where it could be hurting their margins. Now, beyond these immediate steps as sort of a reaction to what's happening right now, I also would encourage you to think farther into the future and consider a long-term strategy that might help you to have more of a moat and more protection against this kind of thing happening in the future. So I'm going to share a few tactics for you to utilize long-term. You need to stop competing on price and start competing on your brand power and the quality of your products. So this could look different for everybody, but one thing that might mean is doing more off Amazon marketing or doing more content to build your brand outside of Amazon or whatever marketplace you're currently selling on. And what that will do, like I said, is build more of a moat around your brand and allow you to weather storms like this better in the future, because people will be so committed and loyal to your brand. They understand the situation, but your product is a big part of their life, so they're willing to pay a higher price, for example. Number 2, really focusing on product excellence and high quality customer service for every single customer who buys your product. So again, this is kind of about building a brand that sticks, that stays. But if your products are high quality, your customers love interacting with you on social media or whenever they purchase your product, they're going to keep coming back for more, and they are going to be maybe willing to accept fluctuations in pricing or other things related to business. So this is exactly the strategy that we encourage our own clients at PPC Farm to do. We can't win a race to the bottom on pricing, but we can win by creating sustainable and trusted brands that demand premium pricing. Now, obviously, it takes time to build an advantage like that, but the sellers who survive this tariff situation are going to be those that adapt in the short term tactically and in the long term strategically. Look, I know the situation with tariffs is super frustrating, and we are living it every day too, from our clients to even our own products that we sell on Amazon. And so if you are looking for any advice on this, you can reach out to me directly. It's Carly McMillan on LinkedIn. Or of course, you can go to our website, ppcfarm.com, and schedule a call with one of us, and we can help you kind of, diagnose what's happening in your business. But I hope that all of this was helpful to get the wheels turning. And if you are interested in more Amazon related content, you can check out my latest video here.